My wife and in-laws are leaving me out of my son's birthday celebration, which I paid for. So, I decided to cancel everything and plan a separate celebration. A few months ago, I began organizing my son Emiliano's birthday party. He was about to turn 8, and I wanted it to be an unforgettable day for him. We booked a large venue with inflatable games, clowns, and everything a child could dream of. I covered all the expenses, every detail. I was thrilled because this was going to be his first big party with his school friends. But as the date got closer, I started noticing something strange. My wife, Valeria, began excluding me from key decisions. At first, I didn't think much of it, but as time went on, I saw that her parents, my in-laws, were taking a more central role. They weren't even asking for my opinion anymore. They decided everything: the guest list, the menu, the decorations. Whenever I tried to give my input, they made me feel like I didn't belong. My father-in-law, in particular, treated me like I wasn't part of the family, like I wasn't Emiliano's father. One day, while they were discussing the guest list, I saw something that made me snap. None of my friends or family were invited. When I asked Valeria about it, she coldly replied, "It's better if they don't come. We don't want them bothering my parents." Excuse me? This was my son's birthday, and I wasn't allowed to invite the people I wanted. But the worst part was when Emiliano, my own son, sadly asked, "Why don't my grandparents want you at the party?" He had noticed. He knew something wasn't right. He told me he didn't like being around his maternal grandparents because they always spoke badly about me when I wasn't there. He said he would rather spend his birthday with me. That broke my heart. My own son was witnessing the disrespect I was facing, and I didn't know how to protect him from this toxic environment. I decided to confront Valeria again. I told her it wasn't fair that they were excluding me from the party I had paid for, and that Emiliano wanted to spend more time with me. Her response was, "It's our son's party, but my parents also deserve to enjoy it their way." That was the last straw. In that moment, I made a bold decision. If they didn't want me at the party, then there would be no party at all. I canceled the venue, the clowns, the games, everything. It was over. Meanwhile, I started planning something special just for Emiliano and me. It was going to be a day that would truly make him happy. He didn't deserve to be caught up in adult conflicts. When I told Emiliano what I had planned, his eyes lit up. He hugged me and said, "Dad, I don't care about the party. I just want to be with you." So, I suggested, how about instead of a party, we spend the day at your favorite amusement park? On the day of his birthday, Valeria and her parents were still busy preparing for the party, unaware that none of it would happen. Meanwhile, Emiliano and I were at the park, laughing and having fun, far from all the drama. Then, I received an unexpected call. The number on the screen was Valeria's. I hesitated before answering, knowing this would probably be unpleasant. Emiliano was still joyful, laughing in the background as he climbed onto one of the tallest rides. I took a deep breath and answered, "Hello? You canceled everything." Valeria's voice was a mix of shock and anger. "Yes, I canceled it," I replied. It made no sense to keep paying for a party where I was being excluded. Emiliano and I are at the park now, and he's having a great time. There was a moment of silence on the other end. I imagine she was processing what I had just said. "How could you do this, Lucas?" "My parents are furious. They're here with the guests, waiting. You've ruined everything." Her voice grew louder, trying to make me feel guilty. "Don't start with that, Valeria. You and your parents are the ones who ruined everything. You completely cut me out of my son's party, the party I paid for. I'm not going to put on a show just to stroke your parents' egos while they treat me like an outsider. This isn't just about you, Lucas. My parents were excited, and Emiliano deserved this party," she argued, but I cut her off. "Emiliano didn't even want this party, Valeria. He told me he'd rather be with me because he's tired of hearing your parents talk badly about me behind my back. Did you know that? Do you even realize how much that hurts? He knows exactly what's going on, There was another long silence. Then, I heard my father-in-law's angry voice in the background. He yelled, "Give me the phone!" And then he was on the line. "Lucas, how dare you do this? You humiliated our family by canceling the party without even telling us. You're an ungrateful fool." "Ungrateful?" I snapped, my patience wearing thin. "I paid for everything every cent, and yet you all thought you could ignore me completely. This isn't about you. It's about Emiliano, my son, whom you're using to boost your egos. You have no right to speak to me like that. We're his grandparents, and we have just as much right to decide as you do," he shouted. "Rights," I retorted. "You have rights when you respect the child's father, which you never have. And you know what? You don't deserve my respect either. Emiliano and I are far away from your toxicity now, and I plan to keep it that way." I hung up before he could respond. My heart was racing, and I took a moment to calm myself. Emiliano ran over, holding a giant cotton candy, his face glowing with happiness. "Are you okay, Dad?" he asked, frowning slightly. "I'm fine, champ," I replied, kneeling to his level. "Today is your day. That's all that matters." We spent the rest of the day at the park, completely ignoring the constant calls from Valeria and her parents. When night fell, we had dinner at Emiliano's favorite restaurant and went home, exhausted but happy. However, the peace didn't last long. The next morning, I woke up to a notification. It was an email from Valeria. As I opened it, I found a long accusatory message. She blamed me for ruining Emiliano's relationship with his grandparents, called me selfish and immature, and even threatened to fight for full custody of Emiliano. I laughed in disbelief. Did she seriously think she had any chance? Emiliano had made it clear how much he preferred being with me, but her threat was a wake-up call. I couldn't underestimate how far she and her parents might go to hurt me. Later, when I picked up Emiliano from school, I noticed something was off. He seemed quieter than usual, looking sad. I asked him what had happened, and he told me that his mom had taken him out earlier for a special lunch with his grandparents. The whole time, they badmouthed me. "They said you're selfish, Dad," he said, "but I know that's not true." He hugged me tightly, and my heart broke. I knew it was time to act. I called my attorney, outlining everything that had transpired. This situation had escalated beyond just me. It was now about safeguarding Emiliano from a toxic atmosphere he never deserved. He should not be a mere pawn in their egocentric games. As I waited for the legal process to unfold, I concentrated on spending time with Emiliano. I made sure he knew that no matter what happened, he could always rely on me. Yet, deep inside, I realized that this was only the beginning. Valeria and her parents wouldn't easily back down, and I had to be prepared for whatever was coming. What I didn't anticipate, though, was that they were already plotting something far more drastic, something that would shake my world to its core. The following morning, I woke up resolute. I had been patient for too long, enduring things no one should ever have to. My focus now was Emiliano, protecting him from the harmful influence his mother and grandparents were having on him. I immediately called my lawyer, explaining how they weren't just excluding me as a father, but were also manipulating Emiliano as an emotional weapon. My lawyer listened intently and agreed that there was more than enough cause to file for divorce and, most importantly, pursue custody of Emiliano. The priority now, he said, is to document everything. We need proof that this environment is detrimental to your son. Save texts, record conversations, and take note of anything Emiliano says about how he feels around his mother and grandparents. I did just that. I kept every passive-aggressive message from Valeria, recorded our calls, and meticulously documented every instance where Emiliano came back upset or shared something troubling about his grandparents. I even recorded conversations where my ex-in-laws openly insulted me. Meanwhile, Emiliano's distress was becoming more apparent. One night, as I tucked him in, he looked at me with confusion in his eyes and asked, "Dad, why does Mom say you don't love me?" My heart shattered. How could Valeria stoop to such a low? Summoning every ounce of composure, I calmly responded, "That's not true, champ. I love you more than anything, and no matter what anyone says, you will always be my number one priority." The next day, I decided it was time to confront Valeria face to face. I arranged to meet her at a cafe near her house. When I arrived, she was already there, staring at her phone with that air of superiority that had always bothered me. "What do you want, Lucas?" she said, barely glancing up. "I want to make it clear that I will no longer tolerate what you're doing to Emiliano. Using our son to hurt me is unacceptable," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. She laughed coldly, dismissing me with, "Use him? Don't be dramatic, Lucas. I'm just protecting Emiliano from you. You're hardly a stable influence." I didn't let her words faze me. I'm the only one putting Emiliano's well-being first. You and your parents are poisoning him against me. And the worst part is, he's starting to notice. She pretended not to care, rolling her eyes in mock boredom. "What really hurts Emiliano is you always trying to be the hero," she said. "Did he say that, or did you plant that in his mind?" Our argument continued, but it was clear Valeria wasn't going to change. Finally, I said, "I'm filing for divorce, and I'm going to fight for custody of Emiliano." Her expression shifted for the first time, fear replacing her usual confidence. "You won't win," she whispered. "My parents have money, connections. Emiliano will stay with me." "We'll see," I replied, walking out of the cafe without a second glance. The legal battle was long and grueling. For months, my lawyer and I presented undeniable evidence of the toxic environment Valeria and her parents had created. Text messages, recorded calls, statements from teachers who had noticed changes in Emiliano's behavior. Everything pointed to the truth. Even Emiliano, during a session with a child psychologist, expressed that he felt safer and happier with me. Valeria fought back, with her lawyers trying to portray me as an unstable father obsessed with controlling Emiliano, but their attempts were swiftly dismantled. The judge was unmoved by their arguments, unimpressed by how Valeria and her parents had excluded my family from Emiliano's birthday and how they cared more about their own pride than the child's well-being. On the day of the final decision, Valeria walked into the courtroom with a look of certainty, but I remained calm. As the judge read the verdict, every word confirmed what I had known all along. Emiliano would stay with me. After reviewing all the evidence, it is clear to this court that the environment in the mother's household is detrimental to the emotional well-being of the child. Therefore, custody is awarded to the father, Lucas. The mother will have supervised visitation rights as determined by the court. Valeria screamed in the courtroom, accusing me of manipulating the system. Her parents were furious, faces red with rage and threatening to appeal, but none of that mattered. Emiliano was safe. As we left the courtroom, I hugged my son tightly and promised him that our life would be different. No more manipulation, no more drama, just peace and happiness. However, Valeria and her parents were not ready to accept defeat. A few days later, I received a threatening letter from them accusing me of stealing their grandson and vowing to do whatever it took to reverse the situation. I knew the battle wasn't over, but I was ready for whatever came next. The most important thing was that Emiliano was finally where he wanted to be, with me, in a home where he could finally be a happy child. In the following weeks, Valeria and her family continued their efforts to undermine me. They spread lies, made baseless accusations, and tried to paint me as a villain. At first, it bothered me, but eventually I realized that none of it mattered. The only thing that mattered was Emiliano and the life we were building together. I focused on creating a warm, safe environment for him. I remodeled our home, transforming his room into a space where he could truly feel at ease. We filled the walls with his favorite drawings, installed shelves for his toys, and created a special corner for his books and games. He helped me with every detail, and seeing his excitement reaffirmed my decision to fight for him. "Do you like it, champ?" I asked as he placed the last book on the shelf. "I love it, Dad. This really feels like home," he replied. Those words stayed with me. A real home, something he had never truly felt before. Meanwhile, Valeria and her parents continued to interfere, using every supervised visit as an opportunity to play the victim. They complained to Emiliano about how unfair I was and told him how much they were suffering. But Emiliano, with his innocence and intelligence, seemed to see through their manipulation. "Dad, why does Mom say you took me away from her?" he asked one evening during dinner. "Because she's hurt, son. Sometimes people say things when they're sad, but that doesn't make it true," I answered, trying to shield him from the conflict. He nodded thoughtfully and then changed the subject, excitedly talking about something he had learned at school. His maturity impressed me, and I knew it was my responsibility to protect him from the weight of adult conflicts. During this time, my family became a crucial support system. My parents, who had been excluded from Emiliano's life for so long, now made it a point to be involved. They took him on outings, attended his school events, and even taught him how to cook simple recipes. Watching Emiliano grow closer to them was something I hadn't realized I needed until it happened. Meanwhile, Valeria and her parents continued their attempts to destabilize me. One afternoon, I received a message from her. "You may have fooled the judge, but everyone knows who you really are. Emiliano will see it one day." I deleted the message without responding. There was no space for that kind of toxicity in my life. My focus was on Emiliano and the family we were rebuilding together. Over time, I began to notice that Valeria's visits became less frequent. Her parents, who once tried to manipulate Emiliano at every turn, were appearing less and less. It was as if they were slowly accepting that their influence over him was diminishing. One day, as I was driving Emiliano to school, he said something that took me by surprise. "Dad, I think they only like me because they want to use me against you." I stopped the car for a moment, looking at him. He was only 8 years old, yet he understood things that many adults never could. "That will never happen, son," I told him. "You are loved for who you are, and no one has the right to use you to hurt anyone else." He smiled, and I knew we were on the right path. Over the months, the distance between Emiliano and his maternal family continued to grow. He no longer felt comfortable during the supervised visits, and even asked to see them less. I respected his decision, knowing it was important for him to have control over those relationships. Valeria continued to blame me for everything. According to her, I was the reason her life had fallen apart. Her parents reinforced this narrative, telling anyone who would listen that I had stolen their grandson and destroyed their family. But I no longer cared. I learned to ignore the whispers and judgmental looks. They could think whatever they wanted. I knew the truth. Emiliano knew the truth. And in the end, that was all that mattered. Life went on, and despite the drama and continued legal battles, I had what I had fought for. My son, Emiliano, and I were building a new future together, one where we could heal and grow. I was learning to be the father he deserved, and in turn, he was teaching me how to be a better man. It was no longer about fighting Valeria and her parents. It was about creating a life where our bond could flourish, free from manipulation, jealousy, and control. And that was the most important victory of all.